I signed the birth certificate knowing the child wasn't mine. I held her hand during the ultrasound, wiped the tears from her cheeks, and played the part of the ecstatic father-to-be perfectly. I even threw the baby shower. But the real celebration wasn't for the arrival of a new life, it was for the destruction of hers. You see, 3 years ago, I had a vasectomy. And the doctor who performed it? He's the man standing next to her in the kitchen right now, drinking my scotch and toasting to my future family. They think they've secured my fortune with a biological heir. They don't realize they've just handed me the weapon I'm going to use to bury them both. That Sunday afternoon, the sunlight hit the marble countertop in a way that made everything look sterile, almost holy. Julianne was glowing. That's what people say about pregnant women, isn't it? They glow? But looking at her, all I could see was the sheen of a predator who had finally trapped its prey. She was slicing lemons for the iced tea, humming a song that used to be ours. "Dr. Vance is coming over later to check on the vitals," she said, not looking up. "He's been so attentive. We're lucky to have a friend like him." Luck, I repeated, tasting the word. It felt like ash. Yes, extremely lucky. I walked to the window, looking out over the estate I had built from the ground up. I was a structural engineer by trade, a man of physics, loads, and breaking points. I understood how things stood up, and more importantly, exactly where to push to make them fall down. Julianne was the artist, the chaotic variable I had foolishly introduced into my perfectly calculated equation. We met 5 years ago at a gallery opening. She was vibrant, loud, and consumed oxygen in a way that made you feel breathless just watching her. I was the quiet checkbook, the stable ground beneath her feet. For 4 years, I thought we were a team. Then came the working late excuses, the sudden interest in privacy, the changed passwords. I didn't hack her phone. I didn't need to. I'm a man of systems. When the inputs change, the output shifts. I noticed the mileage on her card didn't match her destinations. I noticed the withdrawals from our joint account were always just below the threshold that triggers a text alert. But the clincher was the day she told me she was pregnant. She cried, she hugged me, she told me it was a miracle. I hugged her back. I let my hand rest on her stomach. I smiled the smile of a man who had just been handed a death sentence, but played it off as joy. I had the vasectomy 3 years ago, shortly after my company went public. I didn't tell her. I wanted to surprise her with the freedom of a child-free life we had discussed when we were dating, back before she decided my money was better suited for a dynasty than a partnership. The procedure was done by Dr. Marcus Vance, a renowned specialist, a man I had trusted. When I saw him at our house for the first time socially a month before the announcement, I felt a strange tension. When she announced the pregnancy and insisted Vance be her primary care specialist because of his reputation, the math finally resolved. The audacity was breathtaking. They weren't just cheating, they were rewriting my biological legacy to steal my estate. If I died or we divorced, a child, my heir, would grant her access to the trust structures I had set up. They were playing for the kingdom. I didn't confront them. Anger is a waste of energy. It's an uncontrolled explosion. Controlled demolition requires patience. I spent the next 6 months becoming the perfect husband. I attended every appointment. I watched Vance touch her, saw the lingering glances they exchanged when they thought I was studying the monitor. I saw the smirk Vance fought to suppress every time he called me Dad. I started my own operation. I hired a forensic accountant, not a lawyer. I needed to know the financial architecture of their affair. It turned out Vance wasn't doing well. Malpractice suits had drained his liquidity. Julianne wasn't just a lover, she was his bailout package. They had been funneling money from a charity account she managed into a shell company under Vance's brother's name. The theft was irrelevant to me. It was the insult of the pregnancy that demanded a biblical response. I waited until the 3rd trimester. I wanted the lie to be so big, so heavy, that when I pulled the rug out, the gravity alone would crush them. The setup was the gender reveal party. Julianne wanted it lavish, a gathering of the city's elite, my business partners, her social circle, and, of course, the good doctor. She wanted blue or pink smoke to fill the air. I prepared a different kind of reveal. The afternoon of the party, the garden was filled with white roses and expensive champagne. I stood on the terrace, watching them. Julianne was holding court, her hand resting protectively on her bump. Vance was by the bar, looking like the cat who had not only eaten the canary, but had also acquired the deed to the birdcage. I tapped my glass with a spoon. The chime cut through the chatter. The music lowered. 200 faces turned toward me. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steady. "Today is about truth. It's about the legacy we leave behind. Julianne often tells me that a child is the ultimate bond between two people." I looked at her. She beamed, blowing me a kiss. Vance raised his glass. "But sometimes," I continued, "bonds are forged in shadow. When I found out about this pregnancy, I was surprised, not just because of the timing, but because of the biology." A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. Julianne's smile faltered, just a fraction. "I've prepared a short video to celebrate the journey," I said, gesturing to the massive LED screen we had set up near the fountain. The screen flickered to life, but it wasn't a montage of ultrasound pictures or belly bumps.
It was a document, a medical record from 3 years ago. Patient, Thomas Sterling. Procedure, vasectomy. Performing physician, Dr. Marcus Vance. The silence that fell over the garden was absolute. It was a vacuum, sucking the air out of the lungs of everyone present. I saw Vance freeze, his glass halfway to his mouth. Julianne went pale, her hand dropping from her stomach as if it burned. "You see," I said, my voice projecting clearly over the stunned silence, "Dr. Vance performed a procedure on me to ensure I could never have children. He told me it was 100% successful. So imagine my surprise when the same doctor told me my wife was pregnant with my child." The screen changed. It was surveillance footage from inside Vance's office, a camera I'd paid his receptionist to install inside a smoke detector. It showed Julianne and Vance arguing. Audio played. "He suspects nothing, Marcus," Julianne's voice rang out, distorted but unmistakable. "Once the baby is born, the trust fund unlocks. We just have to play happy family for 6 months. Then I file for divorce. You get your money, and I get the house." The crowd gasped. It wasn't a polite gasp. It was the sound of social executions happening in real time. Julianne looked like she was going to vomit. She looked at Vance, then at me, her eyes wide with terror. "Thomas, stop this. It's fake. He's faking it." I didn't stop. I clicked the remote one last time. The screen displayed a wire transfer record. "And this," I said, "is the trace of the $3 million embezzled from the Sterling Children's Charity, transferred to an account linked to Dr. Vance." I looked at Vance. "The police are currently at your clinic seizing your files, Marcus. The medical board has the video of you discussing how to falsify the paternity test. And Julianne?" I turned to my wife. She was trembling, tears streaming down her face, ruining the makeup she had spent 3 hours perfecting. "I spoke to your father this morning. He's removing you from the family board. You have until sunset to vacate the premises. The prenup you signed had a very specific infidelity clause. You leave with what you came with. Absolutely nothing." I set the microphone down. It made a thud that sounded like a gavel hitting the block. Vance tried to run. He actually tried to scramble over the garden wall, but security was already there. The sight of a distinguished surgeon being tackled into a bed of hydrangeas was a detail I hadn't planned, but thoroughly enjoyed. Julianne didn't move. She just stood there, surrounded by the ruins of the life she thought she had stolen. She looked at me, searching for the man who used to adore her, the man she thought was weak because he was kind. "Why?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the murmurs of the crowd. "Why wait this long? Why let me humiliate myself?" I walked up to her, close enough to smell her perfume, the same scent she wore the night she told me she was pregnant. "Because," I said softly, leaning in, "I didn't just want to win, Julianne. I wanted to make sure you could never play the game again." I walked past her, through the stunned crowd, and into the house. I went to my study, poured myself a drink, the same scotch Vance had been drinking, and sat in the silence. Outside, the sirens were approaching. Inside, the house was finally quiet. They say the best revenge is living well. That's a lie told by people who lack imagination. The best revenge is structural. It is finding the load-bearing wall of your enemy's life and removing it with the precision of a surgeon. I took a sip of the scotch. It burned, but it went down smooth. The nursery would have to be converted back into a gym, I decided. I never liked the color of those walls anyway.